So in this video we'll take a look at how we can start creating what's called scenes and sections, and how we can use that to begin building our arrangement. So I've got this project here and I've got a number of different groups. I've got two different groups of drums, a group of synths and some other melodic sounds, and within each group I've got a number of different patterns. And so at the moment we've been sketching ideas using Maschine, and if we switch to the software view, we've been creating different patterns within different groups, and this is called ideas view. So I've got my group A and I can go right about that pattern in group A and group B. Those two patterns work quite well together. Group C, bring in that synth, group D. And we can start experimenting with different patterns. Go back to group A, put a different pattern in there. And this collection of different patterns playing together is effectively what's called a scene. And we're working in ideas view, so we're not committing anything to the timeline just yet. We're just experimenting with different patterns and how they interact with each other. However, if I hit the scenes button, and let's pin the scenes, you can see that a scene is automatically created, the first scene, and that is effectively just this collection of patterns that's playing at the moment. So let's think about this in regards to our arrangement and go, well, let's create a scene that has this pattern 4. Has that pattern. And those other melodic sounds. So that's one scene. Go to this empty scene now just by clicking on the button, or you could press create, and it's all stopped. So now what we can do in this empty scene is add what patterns we want. So go back to group A. We can add that pattern into that scene. Group B. Add that pattern, and that could be it. Go to another empty scene, and we just have that pattern. That could be our intro scene. And I mean, at this stage as well, if it makes it easier and a bit more intuitive, you could go and start renaming your patterns. So you could call this B intro, for example. And now when I go in here, I can see it's called beat intro, and it makes it a bit easier to add the correct pattern. And let's go to this fourth scene, and then let's add that pattern. So scenes are collections of patterns. So it could just be one pattern from one group, or it could be 8 patterns from 8 different groups. This could be a little breakdown pattern, so we could just add something like that. And now using these scenes buttons, I can switch between different ideas and start in my head thinking about an arrangement. You can see on the software, as you switch between different scenes, it activates different patterns. So scenes are collections of patterns. We've still not committed anything to the timeline. We do that by using the sections. So I've clicked on the scene button, I've pinned the scenes so they stay in view. If I hold shift and hit this button, it's the sections button. We can see now we get this timeline over here. So what we want to do now is create a section. So hit create, and it's created a little section for us. And you can switch to the software as well. You can see that we've got our timeline. And so what we can do now is, in this sections, add one of the scenes. So go to this drop down, we created 5 scenes. So I could use scene 4, that's maybe a bit of an intro scene. And then I have a few other options. So at the moment, length, it snaps automatically to the length of the longest pattern in that scene. So I think that means it's a 4-bar length. So automatically we'll snap to the longest pattern within that scene, but we can change this. So I can make that 8 bars, or I can make it 16 bars, or more if I want. But if I made it 16 bars, that could be my intro section, 16-bar intro. So now I can go on to create another section, just hitting on the pad there or hitting the create button up there. And now let's add scene 1. So scene 1's added in, so after 16 bars this section plays, and this could be 16 bars as well. So that's my first section, plays for 16 bars, and then this section, and let's create another section. And there's our little breakdown. We can just have that as 8-bar breakdown. So we have 16 bars of that, 16 bars of that, 8 bars of that. And then we could have our drop. Which could be that. And have that roll out for 16 bars. And that's how we start to commit stuff to the timeline from the ideas view, create those scenes, which are collections of patterns, and add them as sections on into the timeline and start creating our arrangement. We could also move stuff around. So this breakdown section is at position 3. Over here we can see we could move this to position 2 if we want. So now we'd have 16 bars of that scene, 8 bars of the breakdown, 16 bars of that, 16 bars of that. Or we could highlight that section again and move it to whichever position we want. So it makes tweaking arrangements incredibly quick and fluid. And as we were switched to the software quickly, as we started arranging, or suggest, it might be an idea to rename your patterns to make it a little bit easier when you start to add patterns to scenes. The same way you can rename your scenes. So I could rename this scene intro. And so when you go to here, you go to drop one of your scenes into a section, it's called intro. So it makes it a lot easier for me to think about the arrangement if my scenes are named, and then I know, I could name one of them drop, and then it's a lot easier to know where I'm going to be putting that scene within the arrangement. So we create patterns within our group, we add patterns to scenes, and then we commit scenes to the timeline using the sections. We'll take a look now at the part of the grid sections that we didn't cover previously. So shift grid, the perform grid, we have these options here, and this is how this dictates how quickly we snap between different sections. So at the moment it's on 16ths, so I'm now navigating between sections, this section, it's going to snap to the next section at the end of the nearest 16th note, which is going to mean it's just pretty much instant. If I go back into my perform grid and change this to section now, or actually change it to 1 bar, you look at this, it snaps at the end of the next bar. So it's not so instant. Or you could do like eighth notes, quarter notes, half notes, or like snap at the end of the section. So if I go and now select that breakdown section, it's not gonna, the playhead is not gonna jump over there until the end of this section is played. So some ways to customizing how quickly that snaps two sections. And if we go back into grid, we also have this arrange grid, and I've not figured out how you can tweak this or whether you can or not from the hardware, but this is the snap, and we switch to the software, the snap of the cycle length. So at the moment it's on 1 bar, so it means when I tweak the cycle length, it snaps in 1 bar increments. If I change this to 16th notes, you can see it's a lot more fine-tuned. It's snapping at the 16th note, and we also have options for eighth notes, quarter note, half notes, or even just turning the grid off altogether, and then there is no snap on this cycle length. Okay, so some stuff there about how we can start breaking out of that ideas view and creating scenes and sections and committing stuff to the timeline and start building our arrangements.